And he told her that, and I remember the first thing she said to me, the first like word she said to me after that conversation was, she said, "If you end up being crazy when you get out, it is not my fault." Yeah, yep. If you end up being crazy, it is not my fault. And so, I accepted my choices.
Hello, this is Tab Bartley, and you are listening to the Oath We Took podcast, the show that tells the Marine Corps story through the Marines that served. I'm joined today by Chaze Patrick. He is the reason for this podcast. I know so many amazing Marines who hesitate to tell their stories. Their stories hold so much power and so many life lessons. Oftentimes, though, they go untold. Not every Marine story is the same. What is the same is the oath we all took. This week, I'm honored to have Chaze on the podcast to share a piece of his story. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you for having me, Tab.
So the first question I always ask is, why did you decide to join the Marine Corps?
Well, I'm gonna be honest with you. When I walked up to that Armed Forces Services Center, I actually tried to go Air Force. And so, as we know in the Marine Corps world and in the general military world, the Air Force has many people, and so they don't have to go meet quota because everybody just naturally comes to them. Anywho, I was going to the office. The office was closed, and I knocked on the window, and I can remember seeing Staff Sergeant Simpson, my recruiter. I didn't know he was going to be my recruiter. He was sitting outside in his dress blue, smoking a Black and Mild. And he said, "Hey, what's going on?" And I was like, "Hey, I'm looking at enlisting." He's like, "Oh, okay, well, come on in. Come on in and let's talk and try to figure out what you want to do." And so we get in the office, and he goes through the whole honor courage commitment cards, because
That's how you get them.
right.
Those
Yeah, that's the
benefit
package, right?
tags.
So he's like, "Oh yeah, free college, blah blah blah. Sense of service." And I was like, "All right, cool." And this was actually in the fall of 2006. So it was like I was in my senior year of high school. I had just like initially like made contact, and then I kind of just moved on.
Yeah.
Anyway, so it was really awkward because at that point in time, I was in work co-op. So I had two jobs. I worked at Little Caesars and I worked at a wing place like right next door to it. And it was like a big long shopping plaza in the actual military, the military armed services side was like on this side. So I would have to walk around there to get to work. And so I would always try to avoid like take that route because I knew I would eventually run into him again.
Yeah.
Anyway, I succeeded. I mean, for the most part, I didn't really see him after the fact. But then springtime came. At that time, I was my ex-girlfriend. We thought we were expecting. And so, I was like, well, going to college is cool, but really in essence, I have to be able to take care of this child I possibly have.
Yeah.
So, I went to him, talk to the recruiter again, talk to him again, and we got the process started. And funny thing was I didn't tell my mom. I didn't really tell anybody, well, other than my girlfriend at the time. And when we finally decided to go through with it, or I decided to go through with it, my mom wasn't happy.
And where are you from?
I'm from Chicago initially.
Okay.
Yeah.
So general impression of the Marine Corps was not what they wanted or saw you doing for your future.
No. Let's see. My dad served a very short stint, which he never really told me like the extent of his Marine Corps experience. I know it was very short though.
Yeah.
And then his father served as a pilot in the Navy, and then his stepfather and his father, they both were World War II vets. So, the whole like military lineage was strong in my family, but it wasn't very like encouraged,
Talked about.
right? Yeah, it wasn't talked about. Like, I I mean, because I can remember having a great uncle who dealt with alcoholism for years. So it was kind of like one of those things where, everybody came back and they did their time, but nobody talked about it.
So how was that once your mom did find out?
Well, let's just say she wasn't happy because I went to MEPS. I swore in, and at that point in time back then, we had phones and we didn't have smartphones, right?
Yeah.
So I turned my phone off, and then I swore in. The next day I came back home, and my mom was like, "Where were you?" And I was like, "Well, enlisted in the Marine Corps." And she said, "You did what?" And I said, "I enlisted in the Marine Corps." And we heard him get in her vehicle. We hop over there. She goes, sees the recruiter. And she's like, "You're going to deploy my baby." And and he was like, he's not going to deploy. I mean, he didn't really know that, but he told her I wasn't going
I
to
told her
deploy.
that.
And he told her that, and I remember the first thing she said to me, the first like word she said to me after that conversation was, she said, "If you end up being crazy when you get out, it is not my fault." Yeah. Yep. If you end up being crazy, it is not my fault. And so, I accepted my choices. And come to be said, I graduated later on. So her and I had like a big falling out. I wasn't actually scheduled to go to boot camp until I think like August. And so I had already quit my job, so I wasn't working at Little Caesars anymore. Graduated, and her and I had kind of gotten to it. So my ex-girlfriend at the time, we ended up sleeping in a tent in her parents' backyard. And this is like the year where like the cicadas like real bad. I think it was the 18-year cicadas. So they were
Yeah.
like, yeah, so they were like going crazy and stuff, falling all over the place. And I remember calling my recruiter and said, "Hey, look, I know we initially talked about like me leaving in August." I said, "But I'm homeless. Like I'm living in my girlfriend's tent in her parents' backyard. Like I have nowhere to go."
Yeah.
So he ended up making a call, and I ended up leaving June 5th of 2007.
And did you know what MOS you were going to have at the time when you went in?
It's funny. So when I went to MEPS, I actually did try to enlist in infantry.
Mm-hmm.
And it all like I guess they have spaces like I guess they
Boat
like boat
spaces.
spaces,
Yeah.
right? So I guess that's the same thing when you dep in. And that day they had ran out of infantry, so I ended up being customer service management option, which I had no idea what that was until later on when I found out it was warehouse supply. Because even in boot camp, they're like, "What's your MOS? What's your thing?" And I'm like, "Customer service management option." And they're like, "I think your supply." Okay.
I don't know. And at that time, that's when, did you go to Paris Island or you went to West Coast, right?
It was all, yeah, it was all, I think it was anything west of the Mississippi goes to MCRD San Diego.
Yes. Well, Indiana's the only state at that time, Indiana and Illinois, I think, that like everybody else on the side of the Mississippi went Paris Island, but we were the weird ones that went to West Coast. Because I remember when I went, the males that like were in the pool with me, we went to MEPS, and then when we went to the airport, we went two separate ways, and I was by myself the whole rest of the time, as we're like, didn't like put two and two together. So how was that? Have you ever been on the West Coast? How was that, like, experience that weather and stuff?
Other than boot camp and was it not school, it was not SOI, the other version they
MCT,
give
yeah.
MCT. Other than that, and MCT, no.
Okay, so you were stationed East Coast your time in.
Mm-hmm.
So can you tell
totally
me
weird.
Right. Can you tell me a little bit about like that experience and how long did you stay in and what your first duty station was?
My first duty station, so I only did 4 years, just 7 to 11. Well, I was active and inactive reserve, so if you want to lump that in, but 4 active. My first duty station was at Camp Lejeune. And I think Motor T, Supply, and I forget, I think admin, I think their MOS is at Camp Johnson or Montford Point, if you want to look at it from another framework. So I did my MOS school there, and then I can remember graduating from West School, and actually my math sergeant picking us up from graduation. And I'm like, why is a math sergeant picking us up from graduation? Like, we just
Yeah.
graduated. Like, we haven't even like checked into the base yet. So he was at our graduation and actually took us to the unit, which was interesting. It was very interesting.
And how was that experience of because you were active, you said, and then active reserve?
Mm-hmm. It was I felt like I was with my experience, like I had initially I didn't want to reenlist. And then towards the end, I was like, yeah, I want to reenlist, but I don't want to reenlist in supply. So when I finished out, the active side of it, I had a little bit of motivation, like go back. Even more so, like I went to the National Guard, but I checked in, I didn't see the recruiters. Like, I guess they don't need the numbers, and I just moved on because I was like, you know what, I got other things to do, and so I just went to school and made my transition as a student veteran.
And when you were in, what were some of the initial challenges you faced? Because you said initially you did not want to reenlist. What were some of those challenges or reasonings to why, you didn't want to?
Well, I felt that yes, the Marine Corps is great. It'll always be great. It help anybody goes in the service. It helps build them for better, right? But what I came to realize was that everybody's command is different. Everybody has their support from their command is different. I was with the same unit for the entire enlistment practically, and the only reason that I was even considered to deploy was because we were trying to look at having me extend to stay in, which obviously didn't work, but we tried.
Yeah.
And so I was just kind of just done with the games. I wasn't a Marine, right? Like I wasn't like out there, but I was good at my job. I was really
Yeah.
good at my job, and I knew I had the technical expertise where I knew I would be successful no matter where I went.
Mm-hmm.
So that was really like a large play for me. Towards the end, my command was very supportive of like help me through the transition. But yeah, it was really interesting to see.
And
As
I
far as making those choices.
and I think that's part like I feel like oftentimes people feel like as Marines, you can love the Marine Corps, but then still be like, I don't want to be a part of this anymore. I can't handle this type of stuff, where it's not the life I want to live. And it's for me, it seems to be a little unique to like the other branches of service because it's such a like yo-yo effect of like I absolutely love the Marine Corps, I love the Marines, but then at the same time, like there can be just this like almost animosity or like so much does need to change. And like you were saying, especially if you've only been at one duty station, then like you potentially it could either be really bad or really good because you don't have that opportunity of change in leadership to come in to change things. So then you get stuck and it can feel I think because of how restrictive the Marine Corps is from, your weight to every choice you make is like somebody is asking you and having to get approval and all of those things. And so I do think that it's it's hard to like see the light at the end of the tunnel or the potential that like reenlisting it would be any different anywhere else.
Yeah. Yeah. I so when towards the end, told you I didn't want to reenlist. And I ended up wanting to, but I didn't want to stay in supply. So my command did to let me go redo the ASVAB. And I redid it, went to the education center, the whole week.
Mm-hmm.
And I can remember I improved, my scores improved, but I didn't get the job I wanted. The initial plan was I was going to be a PX Marine because you had that back then, and then go ahead and
Yes.
pick up E5 because I had been an E4. I think I had been a corporal for like almost a year, so I was like, all right, I'll go ahead and be a PX Marine, pick up E5. It's going to be skating on the civilian side. I can go ahead and go back to school. Go to college, and I had those plans. But when it came down to it, I think when I was talking to the career plan, he told me I could be a machine gunner, a mortarman, or a cook. And I was like, well, that's not how this is going to go.
the opposite of what I was looking at.
Yeah, that's not how this is gonna go. So, and I was like, and I was actually like having informational interviews with other Marines that were in these MOSs, right? And I was talking to them, they're like, it's like you're a supply, you don't want to be a machine gunner. Like, why? Like my knees are bad because of this. Like, you don't want to do that. Oh, you want to be a morning? Oh, that thing's heavy. No, you don't want to do that, man. Like, no, don't let that man talk to you like that. And then the cooks, the cooks are always working. Like, people think they don't work, but they're like up before everybody else, and then they go to bed after everybody else because the feeding time. So I was like, nah, nope, not doing that either.
I love though that you did those informational interviews because I feel like that's something that a lot of people don't think to do. Like asking the people who are actually doing the stuff what their experience is.
And then, but then you talk to other people in your MOS, and like they're doing things way differently than what you were trained to do in your MOS. Like I didn't know, like with my job, like even though I was warehouse supply, they didn't teach you in school like you had to like deal with personal effects. The Marine Corps, because the Marine Corps order dictates everything.
Yes.
And so they didn't tell me like, oh well, if you go to your unit, oh guess what, you're gonna be over making sure that all the personal effects are in compliance with the Marine Corps order, or hey, if you're running MREs, like, hey, there's a Marine Corps on that. There's a process with that. Like, you don't learn those things. I get it. I mean, being a warehouseman, it's like a 2-week school. So I mean, or warehouse Marine, it's like a 2-week school. So I mean, I know you can't get into the nitty gritty, but it's like kind of some things you need to kind of like know or talk to other people. And like you said, Marine Corps is like largely restrictive. So even if you did try to talk to like I don't know another master sergeant in command, that could actually be adversely for you for going outside of your chain of command.
Yeah, that's an interesting thing about it too. And I know that my experience was so unique because I was public affairs. So we got to see, I used to say this was like the best thing about my job because I could do anybody's job for a day and then bye. Never, never have to do it again. How was your transition out of the Marine Corps?
I'm going to be honest, it was very I was going through a divorce. So during that whole time, like it was very chaotic. So my wife went to my command, and then my command got involved as far as like us trying to get a divorce. So I had to go to base legal, and I did all that, and then she wasn't happy about that, and so she ended up moving to Ohio while I was still in North Carolina. And I was like, all right, well, cool. Like, I'm gonna go ahead and move back to Illinois. Like, that's where I'm from anyway. So I went and moved that back to Illinois, and then she moves back to North Carolina with my son. Like with my son, like my oldest at the time. So it was like, like I'm not about to chase this lady. Like I'm not about to chase her. I had to go ahead and file for our divorce and get all that stuff in motion, and then also work at getting transitioned into college. So I'm gonna be honest with you. Like when I was transitioning out, like I was letting loose a little bit. Like I was drinking every day, I was smoking weed every day, and then like it got to a point where I was like, I'm not getting any fulfillment off of this. Like this is not me. Like I can't think clearly. I can't be, I can't be strategic as far as the way I want to because I'm just like inhabiting myself with these these unhealthy things. And so luckily for me, I was able to snap out of it. And it really came to the point where I can remember at that time, I tried to move back in with my dad. When I got out of the Marine Corps, my whole purpose, the main goal was at that point, because I had 3 younger siblings. I have 3 younger siblings, is that I wanted to show them anything is possible and kind of they could see my journey and inspire them.
Yeah.
So when I moved back, I mean, I was kind of wild, like college wild, and then I ended up, making the transition to being more level-headed as far as what I needed to accomplish. So I would say, yeah, that was kind of the main thing I was dealing with was the whole like divorce and not being around my son and everything. But that was kind of like a three-month stint, and then I got it together and moved on.
And I think that like transition is really hard. I feel like even if everything is set up to like your idea of transition. I have not talked to anybody who's their transition, everything went exactly how they thought it would, and emotionally that they processed the way it was. Because I feel like we don't talk about the emotional impact of that transition enough. And do you feel like that was, kind of that driving force on top of everything else you're dealing with personally? But do you think that maybe had some driving force too in the choices you were making in regards to like the
You,
drinking and the partying and that?
I was so scared to get out. It's funny because you think like I was a civilian longer than I was in the military, right? But then like you get comfortable and like you get accustomed to the culture, and then like I had like a sergeant. I think he just retired too. I think he retired as a mass sergeant. And he was telling us a story like when he got out, and he's like, man, he's like civilian life is rough. Like he's like I got out, and he's like it was rough, and then went right back in. He said because I just didn't want to deal with that. So like you get those stories, right? Because I mean, it's real. Like you get anxiety, like man, I gotta figure out what I'm gonna wear. Man, Marine, like the military, like they like feed me, like I don't have to really deal with that. And then like you get out, you're like, man, I gotta do all this. I gotta like figure out what I'm gonna wear. I gotta make sure I get to work. Oh wait,
And I wasn't ready for how lonely it was going to feel. Even with people around me, that was something that for me, I wasn't ready for that. I didn't know it was going to feel so lonely.
I can relate to that, yeah, because I couldn't really connect the way I wanted to when I transitioned because I didn't have anybody. I didn't have a mentor or somebody that was like, hey, I kind of been in your shoes. Now, granted, like later on, like I joined the American Legion. I
Yeah.
did the honor guard, but even then, like that was kind of like face level. Like I didn't like really get to talk to anybody about, my own struggles I was having with transitioning.
Hello, listeners. The Oath We Took podcast can now be heard on Wreaths Across America Radio. Download the iHeartRadio app and tune in to Wreaths Across America radio station every Monday at 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. As always, I challenge you to not think a Marine, but listen to their stories instead. And so when you moved back home, your goal was to go to school. How was that becoming a student veteran and finding all the like resources and the things you need, setting up your GI Bill? How was that experience?
Well, the military is big about checklists, right? Well, one couple of things, Illinois, we have the Illinois Veterans Grant. Well, that is a huge attraction point, obviously. So when I found out about that, that was like, yes, I'm gonna go back to Illinois. I'm going to pick up this bachelor's right quick, possibly master's, and then I'm gonna move back out to North Carolina and be near my oldest. That was the initial plan. Anyway, the process was pretty seamless to me. Like I had already enrolled, like because part of it when I was checking out, you had to like show like you were enrolled in college and everything. Because I had like 90 some days leave, so I
Okay.
took 60 and sold back 30. And so in all with that process, I was like, look, when I finally made the decision I was getting out, I was like, hey, look, here's my plan. I'm taking 60 terminal because I really never took leave, selling back 30. Hey, I'm already enrolled in community college. This is what I'm doing. You don't need anything from me. I'm just gonna go ahead and go through this transition. So it was really like kind of just checking the box, checking the box, checking the box, checking the box. I got my VA. I had to end up doing a quick claim for my VA claim, like while I was on active duty, because
Oh, good.
people that I was talking to that had got out in my platoon,
Yeah.
we were still talking to each other on Facebook and stuff. So they were like, "Hey, make sure you do this when you get out." Like,
I wish that happened more. I feel like that does not happen enough, that units should keep better contact with those service members who have just transitioned out for things like that. Like the lessons learned that your leadership can't teach you. They haven't gone through it.
no.
They haven't.
Well, I was gonna say with that unit. So a lot of what happened with that unit, that platoon I was with, a lot of them had already like gotten promoted, so they didn't have any lance corporals or below. So everybody was either corporal or sergeant. It was either E4 or up. So by the time I got to the unit, because me and my roommate at the time, we were like the newest Marines because that platoon didn't have any. They didn't have really have any new Marines in a while because everybody got promoted.
Yeah.
up. Um, train of thought. It went.
You good. This is why we record it like this. So you said that they hadn't had any new junior Marines in a while because they all got promoted up. So you and your roommate, or was it your
Yeah, our
roommate? Your
roommate, yeah,
roommate.
the guy I went to MOS school with, who was also ended up being my roommate. They're really happy that they were really happy to have us, and part of it was, well, with that, like a lot of them were getting out. Like either they one of them, some of them were going to recruiter duty, some of them were going on getting a B billet, some of them
Yeah.
were getting out. So when I was telling you about that man started picking us up from MOS school, he was really excited because when we ended up coming on board, our sergeants, one was going to recruiter duty, and then one was getting out. They were teaching us their billets. So I ended up being a PFC with an E5 billet earlier on.
Jeez. Just throw you to the wolves. Here you go.
throw you to the wolves. And then it was like the whole point. Like I hadn't had a vehicle before. Like I got my license at 18, but I didn't drive. I mean, because in Chicago you don't need. I mean, in the cities you really
Yeah.
don't need a license. You can just use public transportation. So
Yep.
that was also around the time like I was trying to like buy my first vehicle, and it was interesting because my command's involved in this, right? Thinking this is a big boy decision or whatever, and now I'm having my sergeant check out my paperwork and getting really involved, which was very unique to me.
And it is unique, but I think too, though, like then when you transition and you go through these big things, and then there's nobody there like double checking or asking the things, like I don't, it's a weird transition of like, it's weird to get used to, but then when it's gone, you're like, well, who's talking about all this stuff that normally, in the Marine Corps, I feel like we kind of get comfortable of, this may sound wrong, but hand holding in a way because they
Yeah.
have to, because the impact of if a junior Marine made a financial decision like that, there's a huge impact.
And it was a huge impact. I signed a car at 18% interest because I was like, you know what, Sergeant, I'll take care of it. And nobody talked to me about like finances, like personal finance. I mean, granted, I know the resources were there, but like I was like, I'm just gonna figure it out. And so I did. I went out right off base, right out of the dealerships, right off the base. Like, because either tattoo shops, strip clubs, or pawn shops, or right off in the pawn, on the dealerships, right off the base. And I purchased my vehicle at 18% interest, my first vehicle, because I didn't listen.
Struggles.
Tough lesson.
At least you kind of got like the back with like as you got out, like those individuals. I'm guessing it was the same individuals who were trying to still assist you as they were learning how that transition went.
Yeah, some of them were. Yeah, some of them I was still connected with, and they were kind of like, "Hey, just checking in." Now you kind of check with them because they're not on the civilian side, right? But it worked out.
And how was being a student veteran? How was that experience?
Been a student veteran 3 times. Um, so the first time I was a student veteran, I was at the community college level, and this is actually when there was a big push to have student resource centers at the colleges and universities. Um, so I went to like the meeting, and at that same time, I was actually a security officer at the college that I was going to school at. And I kind of was like in some of the initial meetings, and then I just went ahead and continued working on my school stuff, right? So working and doing that, and so I wasn't really like active like civilly. I was part of it, but I wasn't like doing things, right?
Yeah.
So I finished up my associate's degree. Well, I finished. I was a security guard at the university at the college I went to. So they ended up losing the contract. So because of that, I ended up just working full time as a student veteran at the resource center, which was pretty skate. Like it was, VA work study 20 hours a week, no taxes. All you doing is helping people, answering questions and helping people sign up for their GI Bill or whatever, right? Pretty easy, right? It was like a resource center / lounge. And then when I actually left there and I transitioned to going for my bachelor's degree, it was was a little bit different. I was still working partially. I had I had a family at that time too, through my ex fiance, and then it was a full class load, right? So I didn't have time to be anything extra or anything. So when I got into grad school, I actually utilized GI Bill again. I mean, I was a student veteran again, but I was like more active. So like I worked at the certifying officials office, help with inputting stuff into the the VA1 system, people putting in their credit hours and stuff. So it was really like more admin than advocacy. So I
Mm-hmm.
had a really good working understanding of that. And then this last part of me doing it again was back in 2016 to 2018, and I was going back for my grad again. Well, going for my graduate degree, but in a different area, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I had made a decision to leave my job with the state to pursue it full time and actually be immersive in the experience, which actually was very beneficial this last time around because, I mean, I made contacts. I mean, not only within Indiana, but in DC, I had a really good experience with the Student Veterans of America, and I had a great opportunity to really connect with some fellow student veterans, or veterans in general. As we add as there's strong advocacy in what we do. So I mean, to me, it was great. The last one I think was where I really wanted to focus on rebranding myself and rebuilding myself, and I felt like I accomplished that.
That is so awesome. And that led you to moving to Indiana? Tell me about that and what you are doing now.
Well,
Or that didn't lead you to moving to Indiana.
I was already in Indiana.
You
So
already there.
I had finished up. Well, I was at Illinois State University in Normal, Illinois,
Hmm.
and it was the fall of 2015, and I was kind of like, I had just when I was engaged. The engaged had ended. I had ended up moving in with my mom, my dad and my stepmom and my brothers and sisters, and it was really rough because I was like, man, I'm working too. I was a grad assistant, and I was a veteran student worker, through the certifying officials office, and then I had a full grad school caseload. I was like, why am I working this hard I don't say for nothing, but I wasn't getting paid. I could have just got a full-time job and just did the school thing on the supplemental side. So I ended up, when my family was like, hey, we're going to move to Evansville, Indiana, I was like, okay, like, what else I got to lose? Like, I'm not really
Yeah.
doing anything here. I mean, I'm not going to say I'm not doing anything, but I mean, I probably can like make money or more money, making this transition. So when we moved over to Indiana, my first job, I was um, they call it a community employment associate. So essentially, you're like frontline with helping people at the work one offices. Helping them navigate the computer, having them navigate, unemployment insurance. That was fun. Pay wasn't as advantageous as I wanted it to be, so I kind of just made do then. And then I ended up taking a lateral move in there, and that's on that side, and ended up being a workshop coordinator. So in that role, I was actually like running the workshops, teaching people how to write their resumes and interview and workplace skills and all that stuff. And then I became a vet rep towards the end of that. So I had
Oh,
like
that's
made like three
awesome.
different position moves within
Yeah.
one office within the 18-month period.
And I think for those who are Hoosiers in Indiana, Work One, I feel like most Hoosiers know who that is. But like if you're a veteran who is transitioning, that is like the resource that if you were looking for a job in general anywhere in Indiana, that is like one of those like start there, at least make sure you know the people who are in your local Work One because there are so many resources. And they're just great about like those local resources and sources and things. So I just wanted to say that in case somebody doesn't know what Work One is, because when I transitioned back home, I had never heard of Work One, even though it's been around,
Yeah.
but I never had a need to utilize it, so I didn't know about it. So it is a great resource. So then from Work One, kind of where did your career go?
Left Work One. I would say so. I think they're the work ones are called American Job Centers. I was on
Okay, sorry, American
put
Job
the pin in on
Centers.
the American Job Centers. That's what they're called, the formal term. After work one, I went back to school full time. Yeah, but went back for my master's in public administration degree because I realized I had still had GI Bill left, and I didn't want to just let that sit there. And back then,
Yeah.
before, we had the 10-year delimiting date, right? So you had to like use it or lose it. And so I went ahead and made the decision to go back to school again. I would fully immerse myself in school, but it was a really great experience because, like I said, I was able to really involve myself from a student veteran perspective. That, and then I was like a post commander for my Legion. My college had the University of Southern Indiana had a university post. I was the last commander.
Really?
Yeah, I was the last commander, but because it was hard to juggle student veterans of America stuff with American Legion stuff. It's just they're two different entities.
They are. They are. They are.
Yeah, yeah. And so I was really involved as far as the student veteran side. I mean, we were getting we were getting momentum. I was still doing my classes. I was doing Uber and Lyft on the weekends. And then I was really busy. So I had class load, VA work study. I was also a marketing assistant. So I actually picked up marketing like concepts as being a student worker. And then like the extracurriculars with, Toastmasters and, American Legion, and then all that stuff. And then you had GI Bill, right? So I made do. And my mom was living with me too.
And I was actually going to bring your mom up to say, how was she when you got out, and how was she throughout like your time in service? Did her perspective change at all, or her support in your relationship? Because you said initially you guys, I mean, it had caused a massive rift.
So when I was in boot camp, she did write me a letter, and she was just kind of like saying like she was very apologetic, and she was proud of the man I was becoming, and she even attended my boot camp
Oh,
graduation.
oh, well, I'm glad to hear that.
So I guess I should preface this too. So I'm her only child. So on my mom's side, I'm her only child. My dad, I have three other siblings. So with her, it was really kind of like my baby, like like really,
like legitimately.
mm-hmm. But
So,
no, so our relationship is good. It's actually gotten better over the years. When I ended up moving to Indiana, I bought my first house, and at that time I had realized that she was in Chicagoland areas. She wasn't making a lot of money, and I kind of told her, I was like, Mom, I said, just move in with me. I had just bought the house. It was only me, right? I had a 3-bedroom house. 3-bedroom house, 2 bath, and I was like, Mom, just move in with me. Like, so she moved in with me, and she was there for all
all of it.
all of the ex-girlfriends in between, and house repairs and everything else. And it was a good experience. It was different being with my mom as an adult compared to like being with her as
Yeah.
as her raising me, right? Because now I'm grown, like hey, like you living here in my house. I'm paying most of the bills, but it was a little bit difficult because when I was dating women at the time, they were like, "So your mom lives with you?" And I was like, "Yeah,
She lives with me. I don't live with
yeah."
her.
But see, that's the thing. Like they're thinking, like, "All right, well, your mom lives with you," and you're like, "Yeah," and like they're like, "So she doesn't pay." I was like, "No, my mom doesn't pay for anything. I pay for everything." So it was a little bit awkward, right? Because it's like, all right, well, I know like you're taking care of your parent, but it's also awkward, right? Like, because like they're like there, right? So when my wife and I got married, it kind of really changed the dynamic because obviously we had to like sell our houses and move into one. So my mom she was a little bit upset, I think, about the whole like transition, but we're good now.
That's good. And now you work at Indiana Vets. Tell
I
me
do.
about that and that organization and what you guys do.
So we are a public-private partnership designed to help transitioning service members, veterans, and their families find meaningful employment and just a community coming to the Hoosier State. So we've been around for almost a decade, and we were founded. Our founder, Wesley Wood, actually is originates in Evansville. He's an Evansville native, and so INvets actually had started under the Connexus umbrella, so that was like really like the manufacturing arms. And so as INvets grew, and the need became great, and we grew with it. Now our team I think we're at 14 now. And we have an ambassador on the East Coast in Lejeune. Retired first sergeant, Marine Corps first sergeant, a great guy. Tony. And then we have Han on California, and then we also have Craig at Texas.
And how rewarding is that job? Like, what do you like about that job, and why do you stay?
I've evaluated my professional experiences. I've gotten out of the Marine Corps, and to be honest with you, a lot of my experiences really revolving around the veterans piece, right? So taking it from being a student worker, helping veterans with education, to when I was at work, when I was a vet rep, actually helping veterans again, right, with jobs and resumes and stuff like that. And then I actually before I came to INvets, I worked for Volunteers of America as a healthcare navigator. So with that job, I was helping veterans access healthcare, right? Whether it be VA or Medicaid or Medicare, and helping them through that process. So it was really kind of like full circle, right? As I took on this position with INvets, I'm like, man, like, this is really like good having somebody that can help you navigate how to better integrate within your community rather than you just figuring it out.
It really, yeah, no, it really is. And I'm from Indiana, obviously. Yep. I love Indiana. I think it's a great place, and I think there's opportunities, and I think that there's so much that people don't realize. And I think that in the transition, that's one of the pieces that is like the first question of like, where are you going to go? We can't really answer any of these other questions or find these other solutions until like, where is it you want to go? Until that, there's not much that can be done in regards to like finding a job and where to live and those type of things, because you have to pick where it is that you want to go.
Yeah, I agree. I think, somebody told me when I used to train as a vet rep with Work One, getting somebody a job is not the solution to the problem, right? So yeah, I may talk to somebody and say, hey, I'm out of the base, and I say, hey, what you're looking for, but you really got to like take the time to build that relationship and that rapport, and say, hey, what's been going on with you, right? Like as a person, right? What's been going on? What do you like to do? I mean, yeah, we gotta pay bills, right? We got a job, but what do we like to do? And if there's something that you have to take for now, how can we set you up for success for that next phase, right? So it's like one of those things where like people are like, oh yeah, job, I'll take anything. It's like, no, you won't take anything, because yeah, if you're a single person and you want to work 70 to 80 hours a week, if that's what you want to do for money, that's great. But if you got a family, you really got to take in consideration work-life balance, right? I mean, making a lot of money is great, or making six figures is great, but if you're sacrificing your time with your family, is it really worth it?
That was something that I was so grateful, because I ended up working at Purdue University, and they demanded work-life balance. Like, it wasn't an option. And I was so grateful that that's where I ended up, because I had no work-life balance. Mm-hmm. The Marine Corps did not teach me work-life balance.
What is that?
Yeah, that did not exist. So that's such a great point, because I don't think that that's something that we're really thinking about in the transition, because it's not something that we're used to. And the community, you mentioned it earlier, finding a community again.
Yes.
And somewhere you can live and feel like you can be a part of, what's going on, because you're now not on a base. You're now not in this setting of almost like forced no choice community. It's now, okay, well, where can you go that you can feel welcomed and not like an alien or not like, you know, all of those things. So I love that you brought that up too, because that I feel like that's such a hard piece of the transition, is if you don't feel like where you went is somewhere you can be a part of.
Yeah. I always say, like, whenever you're trying to like check out somewhere new or you're considering moving, go there when they're having a festival. Go there when they're having a festival or when it's going to be something like really exciting happening. So, you know, like Monday, we got the eclipse coming.
Yes. Yes.
So just believe it's been like, man, people have been going crazy because they're like, oh, the eclipse is coming. And it's like, oh man, like it's going to be so crowded around where I am. But, you know, taking, you know, before you get in that, you get out, take some leave, you know, if you can, right? Don't let it all build up like I did towards the end. Like take some leave, check out some of the communities, you know, drive around, talk to some of the people, you know, that live there. And that'll give you a really good sense as far as if that's where you want to be, where you want to make your next step for you as a person or just your family.
And I think that is amazing advice. Is there any other advice you would give to somebody who's in the transition or really a Marine at any phase of their career that you wish you had heard?
If I were to talk to myself back then, I would say make sure that you're really embracing a mentor or vetting a mentor to help you navigate things, you know, whether it be somebody you've served with before or maybe reaching out. I mean, you could go the American Legion route, you could probably go the VFW route. Find somebody that you can connect with to help you make those next steps, right? Because a lot of times, like I said, we're trying to like sort so many things that we don't have somebody bouncing back ideas with us as far as opportunities. When I talk to, I always call the fellow veterans clients, but when I talk to clients, I say this is very important for you to know what options you have on the table, you know, as you're moving through, because, you know, a lot of the times, sometimes you don't have a natural sounding board to sound things off of, right? So having somebody that maybe you don't have an immediate connection to within your immediate network, you can like reach out and say, hey, I'm trying to bounce something out. What do you think? That could probably give you some inspiration as far as what you need to do for your next steps.
I think that is amazing advice. And before I ask the last question of the interview, is there anything that we didn't talk about or we didn't bring up that you would like to for the last question?
I would like to add with that mentorship, Veterati, using Veterati or American Corporate Partners too, and connect with some other people within the veteran realm of fellow brothers and sisters.
And that is, there are a lot of free resources out there. It's almost, there's so many, it feels hard sometimes to find them.
Yes.
I think because there are so many, but there are. And if one doesn't work for you, search for the next one. Because they're out there.
They're out there and they're free.
They are. So the last question that I'm going to ask you is, if you had to take the oath again, would you?
Yes. I didn't really understand the importance of being a Marine until after I had hung up my uniform. And I would say I was already a decent poor person before the Marine Corps, but like after I became a Marine, it only made me a better rock star, right? I mean, I'm not like the best rock star out there, but the fact of the matter is that it really gives you the opportunity to build yourself around others and to help them be their best, right? Because that's what the framework of the Marine Corps focuses on. Making sure that you look out for your brother and sister, make sure that you guys are building together for maximum outcomes, and overall just making sure that you get clarity as far as what your values are and how you want to move forward as a person. Always do the good thing when nobody's looking, right? Because you never know when they may look.
This is the Oath We Took podcast, and you just heard a piece of Chaze's story. You now know one more Marine and one more piece of Marine Corps history. His sacrifices matter. His stories matter. Not every Marine story is the same. We didn't all join the military for the same reason. What is the same is the oath that we all took. An oath that easily could have ended in death and for some, it did. So listeners, instead of asking you to thank a Marine for their service, I am going to challenge you to continue to listen to their stories instead.